Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of our Shadow People analysis. I am Poetic Heretic, and yes, indeed, we are going to be looking deep into, yet again, the subject of Shadow People, picking right back up where we left off from last night. As usual, I need just a minute or two to get things arranged. Yes, my hair looks terrible because I did not have time to really do anything to it, so we're just going to have to let it look terrible for today. But anyway, I know exactly where we were last night on the site that we were on. We'll just pick right back up where we left off and see what develops. So how do we sound? Okay. So this is a bit of an experimental kind of stream for me because it is happening on a Thursday, something I don't normally do, but I wanted to do it for this subject because I wanted to finish it because it's so interesting. And so hopefully it goes well. If not, oh well, what does it matter? I'm sure it will be fine. Live with more in-depth investigation into the subject of shadow people. Okay, so please bear with me as usual here while I get everything set up. I also just woke up not that long ago. I've got my green tea beside me. And so this is something I've basically never really done before in this capacity. And so we'll see how it goes. I'm not sure what to expect, but that's all part of the fun. So without further ado, let's get started. And just remember, as usual, I'm not here to try to prove the existence or non-existence or anything of shadow people or of most things that I talk about on this channel. We're simply here to do a little investigation as best as we can and have a discussion and see what we can find out. The real thing that I am advising, the real mission that I am on is to inspire critical thinking. That's what I really want. So, when we last left off, we were on nataliacuna.com, and this article appears to be very long about shadow people, and we hadn't really gotten through very much of it. If you haven't seen that part, you can always go back to part 1 of this up on my channel. So, with that said, let's resume. Dark figures with red or green eyes. The dark shadow figures that have red or even green eyes, or reddish or greenish hue, are said by some to be an evil spirit. In other words, this means that they were extremely evil humans who have passed and transformed into this dark, ominous form in order to continue their evil, malevolent ways. They would be dark force discarnate entities. Interesting. Hey there, Sherry Brown. I believe I do remember you. Good to see you again. Shadow figures in the forest. This is ringing a slight bell, this idea of shadow people in the forest. I think, well, let's just see what it says. Some people have seen shadow figures outdoors or in nature settings like forests. These ones that hang around trees are said to be shadow stalkers. Some say that they are protective spirits that guard nature and protect the elementals. They appear as shadow beings, but are possibly not actually harmful. One of the quirks of such shadow stalkers is that some of them mimic people who see them. So when the person moves, they move too. When the person stops, they stop too, and so forth. Okay, first of all, that's really weird because I think there was an enemy in a very old video game that I played as a little kid known as Quest 64 that was called a Shadow Stalker, if I'm not mistaken. Second of all, this idea of when the person moves, they move too, when the person stops, they stop too. I've heard that exact same pattern described with the phenomenon of dogmen. When people claim to have encountered a dogman, they'll say, oh, when they moved, it moved, and when they stopped, it stopped, as they were like sort of, or as the creature was sort of like paralleling them in the woods or wherever they were, like stalking them. Oh, God, sorry, my hair is so terrible today. Another noticeable characteristic is that when they traverse through the woods, they do not cause the normal nature sound effects you would hear from an animal or a person, such as leaves rustling and twig snapping. This is fascinating to me because it reminds me of what witnesses report about Bigfoot or the Sasquatch. It is believed that they too are able to do this. I think it's supposed to say because of their interdimensionality. Ghosts or evil spirits. Some people think that shadow figures are ghosts or especially evil spirits that don't manifest into a human appearance as sometimes seen in apparitions. I would say that this is indeed possible, but others disagree and instead believe that all shadow beings originate from another dimension or planet altogether. Interesting. What are my opinions regarding shadow people being connected to residual energy? No, I don't think we did cover that last night. Connected to residual energy. Not sure I really know enough to give a solid opinion on that. The best I can say from my knowledge is that it's theoretically possible and theoretically plausible because residual energy, in other words, residual vibrations, stuff that can attract potentially all sorts of entities, I would think. So I think it's plausible, but again, I don't know enough about it to really give like an in-depth opinion on it. Hatman. There are various kinds of shadow beings, and one of those is what has come to be known as Hatman. He is just like the classic shadow figure, but also different in appearance and energy vibe. This one wears what appears to be a cape or trench coat and a hat, which can range from a top hat to a fedora or cowboy hat. The reason for this added attire is unknown. One can only speculate that it is to give a sense of mystery or even intimidation, because he is a dark, intimidating entity. Or he has picked a fashion from an era and stuck with it, trying to blend in. It could be a form of mind control or manipulation, working on our subconscious minds in some way. Perhaps we associate the hat as part of a universal symbol or archetype that conveys a sense of status, influence, power, and control. It establishes a stark sense of presence and is something you can't forget. The hat could be a form of disguise to cover up an unusually shaped head, or the cape could also be a cover up to disguise its body that could be alien, unusual, or non human in appearance. It is also possible that under the quote unquote costume is some kind of otherworldly technology or even protection device. Who knows? Oh, this is a long section. Let's see. That is my belief, as I dealt with the same shadow entity in my house for years. Interesting. Yeah, it does make sense. I could see there being indeed connected to residual energy. Maybe even like a different kind of ghost, perhaps, like not a normal ghost, because typically those aren't seen as shadow entities, but some other kind of ghost. What are your thoughts about how shadow beings are often seen prior to a death, possibly indicating that some instances are an angel death? Personally, I think most are demonic in origin, not human. That's interesting. Well, I'm not sure. It reminds me of the Mothman that we actually just talked about on this channel last Saturday or whatever. A lot of people believe that entity will appear prior to a tragedy involving a lot of death. A shadow being appearing prior to a death. Well, I would say, especially if the death that is probable is one of great violence or pain, then it would make all the sense in the world to me that a shadow being would appear prior to that kind of a death, because either they are low vibrational beings in and of themselves, or even if they aren't, they inspire so much fear in us humans that our experience of them is typically very low vibrational, very much on the wavelength of fear and pain and stuff like that. And so if someone had within their realm of current probabilities the high probability of a violent or tragic or painful death, then they would indeed theoretically also be a match to at least the experience of one or even perhaps more of these shadow beings. And again, because of the the fear that they inspire within us. And yeah, they may very well be demonic in origin. I mean, I don't know, but I certainly think it's unlikely that they're human in origin. Although even that's possible. I'm not saying I know for sure. So where were we? I'm not sure if I read this paragraph, so if I reread it, then I guess I reread it. Maybe the black figure in garb is to disguise its origins, as we as humans are not ready for the knowledge yet. This would also match some supposition from experts that these beings are visiting us from the future. The common belief out there in the paranormal community is that Hatman is an intelligent consciousness from another dimension or time-space reality, possibly the future, and probably an alien species, possibly the ones known as the Greys. Yes, and again, as we talked about last night, the Greys have indeed been connected, allegedly, with shadow people, particularly in the work of Heidi Hollis. Like the other shadow beings, this entity could be observing us, collecting data, and so on. Interestingly, many report having, I think it's supposed to say seen him, when they were very young, such as around 5 years old. He does like to watch and instill terror and give off an extremely scary and intimidating vibe, which has been described as evil, terrifying, and unforgettable. It is said that he leaves witnesses with a horrible feeling that is haunting and can last for years. He sends a kind of signal and vibe making you feel like he will return. It is possible that Hatman is a leader of the shadow figures and or that it is connected to the Men in Black, though this is just speculation. See further below. Yeah, as I mentioned last night, the impression that I've gotten from studying the Hatman versus shadow people over the years is that Hatman is like a shadow person, only 1,000 times more sinister, menacing, frightening, and if they are actually evil, then evil. Men in Black. These are intimidating, sinister humanoid entities said by conspiracy theorists and experiencers to be created by the government. They look similar to the movie by the same name, and there is also a connection to them in Aliens cover-ups, and also a connection between them and Mothman, allegedly, as we went over recently. They always appear in a very secretive and intimidating manner, and much like the creepy black-eyed children, are said to have an awkward, robotic way of communicating. They often wear hats and dark glasses that cover their eyes. That is most probably to disguise the fact that they are not human. Their suits seem to be their best effort to blend in with us, but there is indeed something quote-unquote different and unapproachable about them. Other dark beings. This is now getting into the realm of all that is opposite to God and the light, and we enter the dark side and the grand enemy known as, I think it's supposed to say Satan. And then it says in parentheses, I generally prefer not to say the real names of such dark beings. And his jinn and minions, and even the entity commonly known as the Grim Reaper. Isn't there another largely known shadow person known as the Hooded Figure? I've seen some things on it. The Hatman description matches my experiences. Felt that it looked like the Grim Reaper. I don't know. I don't think I've heard of that one, or if I have, not very much. The Hooded Figure. I've heard of like shadow people wearing hoods, or even the Hatman appearing as hooded, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that could be like a whole nother figure. Demonic entities. These are the minions cast by Satan. They cause fear. They cause chaos and fear. They love to break people down and terrorize them. I have experienced the force, power, and threatening nature of these dark entities. On one occasion, while I was going through a negative energy incident involving other people, demonic creatures came into my dreams and gave me nightmares. They came right up to my ears and tried to intimidate me. I recall desperately trying to invoke the protection of Archangel Michael, but in typical nightmare style, I couldn't get out a sound from my mouth. I barely managed to whisper his name. So it seems like this person has a very strong antipathy towards, well, I guess the idea of Satan. They're not even spelling out Satan. They're putting S, 3 hyphens, and an N. So I don't know if they're coming from like a religious predisposition or what, but I would just remind people, be careful what you choose to believe, first of all, because your beliefs form reality. And second of all, I don't know, being in such a state of antipathy to such things that you're not even willing to say the name Satan, to me smacks of resistance to that, as well as demons. And well, if you're going to be in a state of resistance to them, you're going to be likely to attract them. And now they're talking about having firsthand experiences with them. So I would just say, again, be careful what you believe. Remember, your beliefs form your reality. You know, if you believe in devils and demons, you may very well encounter them. Not saying they aren't objectively real, but I'm saying if they're a big part of your belief system, if they're a big part of your overall vibration, don't be surprised if you encounter them, basically. Let's see. I witnessed shadow people phenomenon in my home prior to a very close loved one dying of cancer. She never saw it, but I did. It stopped appearing once I contacted a traditional Catholic priest. Yes. Yeah, it makes sense. Like what I was saying earlier about if someone's going to die of cancer or die like a tragic death, then it would make sense that that either that person or someone close to them would be a match to seeing these entities. And then it stopped appearing once you contacted a traditional Catholic priest. Yeah, well, that's good at least. Yeah, and that's something that we came across last night as well. This idea of like people saying that invoking like the name of Jesus or other religious things can help to make these entities go away, which again, power of belief. That's my thesis. If you believe strongly that it will work, if it makes you feel safe, if it feels divine, powerful, holy, whatever, then then it does have power. I know that not everyone sees it quite that way, and that's perfectly okay with me. I'm just telling you what I believe. All right, let's continue. That same night, my young children both woke up in the middle of the night crying hysterically. My very intuitive son said that something was trying to touch him and he was absolutely terrified. Though the ones I saw didn't appear in shadow form, I do know that they can be experienced that way too. Interesting. Jinn. It is said that in the beginning, three were created: man made of clay, earth, and water, angels made of spiritual light, and a third made of fire. Beings known as jinn are actually not talked about much in the Western world, as they seem to be more of a Middle Eastern tradition. They are said to be created before man and are mentioned in the Quran as malicious, wicked beings with supernatural powers created by God from a pure, smokeless fire, which would explain why they are often seen with smoke coming out of them. Quote, the angels were created from light and the jinn from smokeless fire, end quote. Sahih Muslim. They are analogized as genies and are depicted in hidden ways in stories such as Aladdin, and present themselves in different forms, including humanoid and animal. Hence, it is possible that they could appear in a kind of shadowy form too. They dematerialize quickly and are able to appear dark, animalistic, and even in strange contorted figures, vapors, mists, or cloud-like forms. It is said that they are created out of free will as we are and live in a parallel world to ours and in communities, much like humans. Because of their free will, some are good and some are evil. They feel themselves to be superior to humankind, and thus it is said that God cast them out of this world until Judgment Day. Yeah, I've heard this idea of jinn a lot of times before. There are, supposedly anyway, many different varieties of these jinn with many different kinds of intentions in general and regarding humans. Some have good intentions towards humans, want to help humans. Some want to like harm humans or even just play tricks on them. Some are completely indifferent to humans, don't give a shit about them, basically. I think some want to study humans. Supposedly they have all kinds of different intentions, these jinn that exist in another system of reality, apparently. Let's see. These beings have an agenda against us, this article goes on to say, funny enough, and cause a lot of chaos and havoc, much like demons do, and it is believed that they are a part of the army of Satan. They have shape-shifting abilities and use them in order to create deliberate confusion. The Grim Reaper. This scary figure is the Death Collector, known in the Cherokee tradition as Stalking Death. This is the kind of ominous being that will be after a person's soul, their death being the ultimately dark victory. Let's see, other theories. Let's see, upon doing research on the history of this phenomenon, I discovered that the ancient Greeks, Romans, and Hebrews all had acknowledged a spiritual phenomenon known as shades, or literally shadows. Ooh, isn't that interesting? Yeah, that's the thing. It seems like in so many different cultures throughout the world and throughout history, people have had some form or some belief in entities like shadow people. And also, I believe this connects to sleep paralysis in ways like old hag syndrome and that sort of thing. Like, a lot of this stuff is described by a lot of different people. And so it makes you think, well, is it really likely to just be imaginary if so many different people, different cultures, and different times have described it. Other theories: astral travelers. Some theorize that shadow beings are the astral beings, the essence of people who are astral projecting, i.e., having out-of-body experiences, and thus unconsciously floating around in their astral bodies. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really like that theory. Like, obviously, there's no way I can say I know for sure that isn't the case, but if I were to just go with my intuition says no, it's really likely not people in their astral bodies. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it is. Time travelers. This is the theory that shadow figures are people who are time traveling. There is speculation that they are visiting from a future dimension. The ways that we experience them. Shadow beings seem to like the dark rather than the light. Hence, they come more at night or while you are sleeping, or appear in more darker areas of your home or other places. Having said that, they have been reported to have been seen in crowds or other public places too. It is usually a very silent experience. They do not seem to verbally communicate, but they do seem to stare intensely into your eyes like they are reaching your soul and sending a hostile signal that feels like a warning. A common reaction that people experience in these encounters is that they become absolutely frozen, shocked, and in a state of fear. They feel like they are momentarily paralyzed or can't move. They have a sense that these entities are triggering immense states of terror and feeding off their energy. Others report that these entities jump on top of them in bed and try to press on their chest or choke them while they are sleeping. Now we're getting back to the sleep paralysis stuff. They can come into your dreams or try and break you down during the night hours by tainting you and pulling your energy down. I think it's supposed to say taunting you. This is their way of infiltrating you so that you become physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually affected, and that they can get into your energy field even more easily. There are several paranormal experts that believe that shadow beings can make those growling sounds or even intimidating voice phenomenon you hear on EVP sound recordings and paranormal TV shows. My instincts tell me that some trapped spirits, earthbound ghosts, especially in very active or haunted locations, can also see them, as well as other entities, and are terrified of them. I would not be surprised if shadow beings actually feed off them too and get their kicks out of terrorizing these deceased souls who would be easy targets. Shadow beings feed off of them. Well, if it's true that, I'm not saying it, let's just assume that it's true for a moment that shadow beings do feed off of humans and other entities. That would give them more of a demonic type of reality or nature, because the very idea of a demon basically is an entity that believes it is completely separate from source or God or whatever, that it does not receive enough energy to sustain itself. It does not receive enough energy from God or source or whatever to sustain itself, and thus, therefore, it has to feed off of other entities in order to gain enough energy to sustain itself. Let's see. According to the patristic writings, when King Saul attempted to contact the spirit of the prophet Samuel via the witch of Endor, what appeared was an unseen shadow. That's interesting. The commentators indicated that this was not actually the spirit of Samuel, but a demon. Fascinating. Could it have been one of these shadow people? And hello, Sacramento paranormal investigators. Good to have you here. All right, let's see, where were we? Some people experience these beings only once or perhaps several times over a period of years. while others feel individually targeted and harassed by a countless number of entities or sightings, to the point that it feels like a serial stalking. These multiple experiencers feel that they are being watched, stalked, or preyed upon. It is also possible, like many other entities, for these malevolent beings to also, again, there's like typos in this. I think it's supposed to say for these malevolent beings to also, quote unquote, attach to certain people, much like a spirit attachment. You might just see them for a split second, either with your ordinary eyes, psychic vision, or in a dream state. They are either stationary, moving, or appear to be trying to approach you. When it happens, you are not actually seeing them with your normal physical eyes, and often not even with your third eye, your psychic chakra located in your forehead. The Cherokee elder Thunderstrike believes you are seeing with what he calls the fifth eye, or dream eye, which is in the location of the soft spot of a baby's head when it is born. That's the eye which gives you extrasensory perception when you dream, during that rapid eye movement in your sleep. He claims that according to his wisdom teachings, there is also your fourth eye, which is behind the base of the spine, and that is where you get the sensation that you are in danger as animals do, and have the hair stand up, or that chilly feeling at the back of your neck. You also have an eye on the palm of each hand, and this has been depicted in many spiritual texts. Eyes in the soles of your feet, and the universal eye, which is in your navel/womb area. So we actually have 10 eyes and 5 ears, as we also have internal ears to hear during dream time. Wow. Interestingly enough, it's talking about Cherokee legend, and this Thunderstrikes, I think being a Cherokee, it just said, well, apparently, if my awareness of my own like family history is accurate, I guess I am 1/16th Cherokee. Like, as long as the information that I have is solid, then 1/16th would be the amount. Maybe that's why I'm fascinated by these entities and studying this stuff. Anyway, he goes on to explain that at night in your dream state, you have heightened energetic sensitivity and awareness, and therefore you will be more likely to experience supernatural phenomenon, both good and bad, and see such beings. This would explain why many people see them in their dreams while sleeping or as they awaken in the middle of the night. They are said to be a vampiric energy which feeds off our emotional chaos and discharge of energy. That's in quotes, emotional chaos and discharge of energy. Yeah, and again, that would be more of like a demonic type of entity that feeds off of people or other entities. So what happens is that when you see them, you expel a whole lot of shock and fear energy in your state of being alarmed. I'm supposed to say state, maybe? I don't know. And momentarily frightened, and that is the energy that they feed off. So you are like an energetic battery or food to them. Just like a vampire sucks blood and then takes off, so too does a shadow person. They never stay around for long. Yes, I've heard this idea many times before. Yeah, that's another common idea, that the shadow people and other vampiric type entities allegedly will feed off of low vibrational energy. In other words, that of fear or trauma or guilt, terror, that sort of thing. First time I saw one, it appeared as a cloud of smoke. The second time, it appeared as a humanoid silhouette peering through a doorway. That's interesting. Yeah, apparently that's another form that people will see them in often enough, is as like wispy, smoky kinds of beings. Fascinating. Third and final time was during an instance of sleep paralysis. Yep, that's when a lot of people see them a lot of times, is during sleep paralysis. Let's see. My own experiences with shadow people. I have experienced shadow people twice in my life. The first time was around 2010 in my dream state. In the dream, a very tall, large black shadow person was in my Virgola. I was with a friend looking at it from inside. We stood there absolutely frozen, clinging to each other. We were we were in a momentary state of fear. It was standing there with an intense, foreboding kind of stare, giving the impression that it was going to move towards us and try to get into the house. That is all I remember of that dream. It felt so real, and I know as an intuitive person that it was not just a dream. This was a visitation. Wow. Around that time, I was developing spiritually and getting over another negative incident, so I'm not surprised that it made that unforgettable appearance. It wasn't until later that I put two and two together. My husband later told me that he had been, quote unquote, feeling a dark, quote unquote, presence in the garage, which connects to our Virgola, for a while now. He said that he even saw a dark shadow figure. He didn't initially tell me because he didn't want to scare me. He now knows to tell me no matter what. One day after that, we were sitting in the Virgola, and I felt a very intense kind of negative force of energy come right up to my back as if in an intimidating manner, and then retreat again. I turned around and nothing was there. My husband said he had been experiencing moments like that too. I gave that my whole house inside. What is this trying to say now? I think it's supposed to say, I gave my whole house inside and out a good spiritual cleansing and it went away. Years later, I was preparing for a client to come over for a psychic mediumship reading. I hadn't done my spiritual protection for the day yet as I had been busy, and that is when they like to catch you unaware. I was in my bathroom and I had this feeling that there was a spirit presence. In this moment of time, which felt like a split second, it was like I saw a dark shadow figure with my real physical eyes, even though it was standing behind me, and my mind's eye, my psychic eye. I turned around, but nothing was there, even though I clearly both saw it and sensed it on some level. I got busy preparing for my reading and put it out of my mind. After the reading, I popped out and forgot all about it. Interesting. Let's see. It appeared as a hooded shadow with red glowing eyes. As soon as they called upon the name of Christ, it disappeared, and I was released from the paralysis. Interesting. Yeah, those red eyes. That's a very common thing. As is people invoking the name of Christ or Jesus or other religious names and causing these entities to go away. Because again, when you think about it, so if it is true that these entities thrive on the vibration of fear, maybe that isn't the case, but let's say that it is, then anything that causes you to take your power back, so like if you're a religious person and you invoke the name of your deity, anything that causes you to take your power back, they're going to have to be repelled from. Like, they won't have a choice, because if they're a match to fear or those low vibrational states in general, then when you take your power back, they're not going to be a match to you. And I'm not trying to even sound like like I'm giving some philosophy here or anything. No, this is like literally the physics of it. So anyway, let's see, where were we? When I returned back to the house, my husband was now home. I started to feel randomly over emotional. I intuitively asked my husband if he had sensed anything when he came home. Even though I am a psychic medium, I sometimes count on my husband's natural perception, protection, and groundedness. He said it was funny that I should ask that. On his way home, he felt great anxiety and a sense of impending doom, like something was going on in our home, although he didn't know what. As soon as he said that, my senses felt an overwhelming sense that there was definitely a presence in the house. I realized I hadn't cleared enough after my client, as I was in a rush and I started to feel more and more emotional. This was a definite sign I was being affected by an unsavory energy. I immediately saged my family and the whole home and felt much better. It was gone. That seems to be perhaps like a common challenge for anyone who's like a psychic medium or anything like that, um, is that their sensitivity can theoretically open them up to more things, and so they have to be really careful. At least that's a pattern that I've kind of begun to notice, I think. How did they come to be? Some believe that we created them out of our own fear over time. In this way, even though God created all things, these beings have not come from God, but rather from our own creations. I suppose you could make this analogy to wrap it around your head. Does God create guns? No, we do. God has provided us with Earth, the greater cosmos, and many resources. It is up to us how we use them. Yeah, or even if you want to say, put it in these terms, we are extensions of source energy, but we still have a free will to think whatever we will and do whatever we will. So we can think thoughts that are positive, or we can think thoughts that are negative. Well, if we think enough negative thoughts, if we choose to think enough negative thoughts for a variety of reasons, these theoretically can coalesce into thought forms that then become, in and of themselves, entities, negative entities, because it was negative thought that originally created them. And that could be how shadow people come to be. That's another theory anyway, and I think one of the more plausible ones. So let's see. Just like there are God creations, there are also man-made creations. Some are created consciously and others subconsciously or unconsciously. We can't always control our thoughts, feelings, and experiences, not to mention know how to utilize or comprehend the full power of our will. And especially, let me just say, when for those of us here in human form, if you try to only ever think positive thoughts, you will completely screw yourself up. Like, that's not the kind of reality that we live in. And you just, try it. If you don't believe me, try it. You'll completely screw yourself up if you try to only ever think positive thoughts. That's not what this reality is about. This reality is about the transformation of the negative into the positive, of darkness into light, among perhaps other things. During the sleep paralysis incident, I actually wasn't afraid of it at all. I remember smiling, not because I was happy to see it, but because it was a sort of confirmation that I knew what I was seeing was real. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, people have different reactions to these things. It's not always fear. Some people feel very calm about it, surprisingly. Or at least that's what we've found in our in the stuff we've gone over, or the stuff I've gone over. Why do they appear? What do they want from us? What draws them to us? And why are we seeing them more now? Here are some possible reasons. Why you? Perhaps you're going through a negative cycle. Are you down, worried, stressed, angry? Remember, shadow people feed off fear and lower energy. There are some people that just seem to draw in negative energy to them like a magnet. If you have been playing with a Ouija board or involved in some kind of group or magic without good intention or protection, you can be inviting in the unwanted. Yeah, and I mentioned this in part 1 last night, but that is indeed something that I've come across again and again over the years with these kinds of stories and stories of encounters with other negative entities, is people saying that they were using a Ouija board just prior to the appearance of these entities. And that's a reason that I decided a long time ago. I personally would never risk using a Ouija board just because I wouldn't want to take that chance. I understand other people want to use it for their own reasons, and I'm not trying to stop them from using it. I'm just saying that I personally would not do that just because of the things that I've heard. Apparently, people who use the drug meth have reported seeing them more. We also read a story about that last night. That's interesting, kind of weird. This brings up the issue of whether they are hallucinating or actually able to see between the worlds more in their drug-induced state. Or perhaps you're opening up spiritually and are an evolved soul shining your light. Perhaps you have some natural or even untapped psychic ability. A shadow being might appear in order to try and bring you down and turn you to the dark side. By this, I do not necessarily mean join the forces of evil and become a Sith. What? This can be as simple as becoming irritated, angry, and depressed. Your light becomes dimmed and your energy is brought right down. You start questioning yourself, other people, your job, and life, and you are back in your ego. Well, if that's the case, I've had a negative entity tormenting me for like forever. But see, that's the thing though. You have to be very careful with this kind of stuff because I would say if you're feeling like irritated, angry, and depressed and your energy is being brought down, stuff like that, that's far more likely to be some kind of unresolved trauma than it is to be an actual negative entity. Though it's complicated because if these entities exist, they would be drawn to trauma. They would be drawn to negative emotional states. So I guess they kind of go hand in hand, but I don't know. I would say focus more on resolving your trauma than jumping to conclusions of it being an actual entity. Now, I mean, it's different if you actually see something head on, I suppose, but anyway. They feed off our energy, fear energy on Earth. The world is in chaos, and these hungry interdimensional beings are feeding off all of our negative energy. I'm sorry, again, there's like typos and stuff. They're drawn to negative mental and emotional fear energy. Earth is a smorgasbord for these creatures. The quickening. Earth is changing and shifting in energy. We have shifted into a new era, and there is a quickening of energies that has been happening since the beginning of this new millennium. Everything is heightening, and even our metabolism is moving faster. This explains many things that are happening in the world and amongst people. We are awakening. Yeah, I wonder if that's true. I wonder if that's true. A lot of people seem to believe that. Electromagnetic energy. We now live in a modern electromagnetic world. See below. They are very drawn to electromagnetic energy. This would explain why many people have seen them while they are watching TV, on their computer, using a device, or around electromagnetic equipment. Or perhaps live streaming, I wonder. Hopefully I don't see any of these entities. It also answers for one of the reasons why they'd come into your room at night, apart from the fact that you are more accessible in your dream and sleep state. This also explains why they sometimes come during very bad weather, like when there is lightning storms. This is because of the electromagnetic discharge being dispelled. In Greek, one of the words for sorcery, aside from is pharmakia, which means the use of hallucinogenic drugs for spiritual or religious purposes. These include drugs such as DMT. That's interesting. So connecting the idea of sorcery with the use of hallucinogenic drugs. Even like DMT, which I think many of us know what that drug is connected to, apparently. Thunderstrike believes that they are inorganic forms, i.e., not having the structure or organization characteristic of living bodies, and we are quote-unquote projecting and completing the shadow people phenomenon out of our soul beings and into the ethers, the universe, through the darker energy of our negative emotions, our anger, guilt, greed, jealousy, envy, resentment, blame, shame, possessiveness, etc. In his words, quote, we are assembling them into our world of perceptual reality. Because they exist in a parallel dimension within the 7 streams, or dimensions of reality, there are actually 72 parallel dimensions to either side, including the 5th dimension when you are dreaming at night, end quote. I would say again, though, just remember, even if these entities are drawn to and feed off of, guilt, anger, and all of this stuff, The answer to that is not to suppress the emotion and try to just force yourself to only ever think positive. No, the answer to that is to resolve whatever the underlying psychological issue is that is leading to those. Don't use paranormal phenomena as a means of invalidating yourself and thus abusing yourself. Don't do that. You'll just make the condition worse. Oh, this is a long site. We've been streaming for almost an hour and we're still on it, but it's almost over. What can you learn from seeing a shadow person? Like any paranormal experience, it is important to face your fears and your shadow side, and don't stay stuck in negativity, which will just aggravate things. You have to learn to manage and control your mindset, attitude, and approach to life. A shadow person might be coming into your reality in order for you to learn something about yourself, or even your shadow side. So always take time to think about what the experience might mean for you and whether there are any changes that you need to make. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But everyone's journey is unique in that sense, though. Everyone's journey is unique. For some people who are really stuck in depression, reaching for only a slightly less negative thought or feeling like guilt or shame or even like jealousy or hatred or revenge is a step in the right direction, because that's getting them at least a little bit of their power back. So, we are all on our own path, and all states must be validated, including and perhaps even especially the negative ones. I don't do any drugs, for the record, LOL. That is good. That's good. Neither do I. Except for consuming caffeine, like I guess pretty much everyone does. How can you protect yourself and get rid of them? Usually these beings will just disappear on their own. Their visitations and movements are extremely fast, quick, and fleeting. What you need to remember is that they are only as strong as we allow them to be. You will only be affected as much as you allow yourself to be, so it is up to you to develop your spiritual strength as a counter-resistance. However, to fully protect yourself and your space, and to avoid them reappearing, there are tools and methods you can use. Call upon and invoke the protective powers of God, Jesus Christ, Archangel Michael. Just saying Jesus' name can be enough. They are instantly repelled and banished. The light is too strong. Or I would say the name of any deity or anything spiritual that makes you feel safe. Because again, far be it from me to be a proponent for religion, but whatever your spiritual beliefs are, calling upon what you believe in. Like if it were me, I don't know, I'd probably call upon the light of source energy itself. That should be effective in repelling these entities. Say protective prayers. A super powerful one is the Archangel Michael prayer of protection. Be very vocal, yell out to them, demand they leave, laugh out loud at it, put on some loud music, use sage, fully sage the area, yourself, all family members, and the home. They do not like and will be repelled by a sacred mix of these 4 natural protective magical herbs. Mix in equal amounts of each: sage, cedar, sweetgrass, and lavender. A banishing ritual. In worst cases, or if you just feel you want the reassurance, seek an expert in the field, such as a shaman or house cleanser. Send it into the violet flame. Use protective crystals. Their frequency is very disruptive for them. Learn other psychic protection tools and techniques. Make an effort to watch your thoughts and step out of negative thinking. Clear the energy of your home, clear clutter, etc. Reduce the effects of electromagnetic energy by using crystals or other known methods. You can maintain good energy and even avoid having negative experiences such as this in the first place by raising your vibrational frequency, making sure your house is clear of clutter, energy clearing your house, and so on. It looks like that's finally it for this website. All right. So it's interesting. That person, like many, seem to have a very like intuitively certain disposition towards this stuff. You know, a lot of their advice comes from things that I don't know even how to say what I'm trying to say. It's like, how can you really objectively prove that like half of that stuff is true or works or whatever? And I'm not discounting that. I think that's great. It's just that I just want to remind people that I'm personally not coming at it from that perspective. I'm coming at it from, I don't know, a perspective of trying to figure out literally as objectively as possible what is actually taking place and what actually works, and if anything can even, dare I say, be proven to work in either repelling them or figuring out what they are or whatever. You know, I'm not going to sit here, because here's the difference. Here's the distinction. That person, with all due respect to them, of course, it looks like she was saying that she knew for sure certain things, a lot of things even, about these shadow entities. I'm not saying I know for sure these things about these shadow entities. I'm just trying to figure out as much as I can. And I'm trying to exercise as much critical thinking as possible. And like I said at the beginning, that is my real intention and advice for other people regarding these things. Anyway, is I'm advising people and hoping to inspire people to think critically about this and about everything. So give me just a moment here during our little intermission, and then we'll proceed to our next source of information. Yeah, it feels a little weird streaming on a Thursday, and it's slightly stressful because I'm used to just sort of resting on this day, but I really wanted to finish this up since it got really late last night. So here I am. All right, next up is angelsghosts.com, types of shadow people. All right, let's check it out. Are there different types of shadow people? Are shadow ghosts different beings? Shadow people are likely the most common description given for ghosts by people. Theories abound about the different types of shadow people. Some believe they can be classified into different types of beings, such as aliens, demons, disembodied people, animals, and even unknown monsters. While it would seem there are different types of shadow people, perhaps the descriptions differ for several reasons. Through a ghost investigation of shadow people, our findings concluded that shadows of different types are either human or animal in nature. The shadowed forms seemed to also differ due to size of the person or animal. Incomplete forms, such as hands or feet missing, were likely more the result of an incomplete manifestation or movement. If the shadow person is negative, traumatic, or ill-willed, the form often is seen as a heavier, darker mass. Ill-willed specters appeared more diabolical, controlling, and adept at altering appearances to seem more ominous. Manipulating others through fear, they often cause people to feel dread, sparking great fear in those whom they wish to attack. Still, most shadow people are not ill-willed or pose a threat. Often they are deceased loved ones who either want to observe, watch over us, or even seek our help so they can resolve past issues. Wait a minute. Often they are deceased loved ones. I don't know about that. I don't know. That seems to differ from a lot of the stuff we've come across so far, and it also doesn't really make a lot of sense, in my opinion. Why would shadow people be deceased loved ones? Why not typical ghosts? And how are they so certain about that? Where are they getting this information? Where are they getting their certainty? Is there any more to this? Oh, here we go. When shadow ghosts become visible to the human eye, it would seem that one of the first forms that may be noticed is a mist. This would explain why some shadow ghosts appear in a fog-like manner, or why the end of limbs might be incomplete. As the entity comes further into view, the black mass will begin to take on the shape of a person or animal form. Still, details of the shadow have not yet emerged, so eyes might not yet be seen, etc. If the manifestation continues, the shadow person will sometimes become visible as a see-through apparition. Hey, thanks so much for the donation, Jesus Pharaoh. I appreciate that a lot. That helps a lot. Here's an article you may want to read. Oh, okay. Yeah, we can go to that next. We'll go to that as the next site. Let's see. Yeah, if the manifestation continues, the shadow person will sometimes become visible as a see-through apparition. A seasoned ghost investigator and friend of mine recently witnessed a complete apparition appear before her eyes. The shadow person slowly became transparent and colored in form. Soon, she knew she was looking at a man who had formerly worked at a coal mine where she now resides. Her account is highly credible and fantastic confirmation of the stages of how ghosts might fully become visible to us. It seems like a mistake for us to classify shadow people into types. However, we cannot rule out the possibility that other entities might look like shadow people. There could be other plausible explanations for shadows that look like people, such as astral travelers of the earthly realm, people who purposely practice having out-of-body experiences in order to become a temporary, disembodied human spirit, psychically created thought-form ghosts known as tulpas, or if at times we appear to others elsewhere while asleep. We could be in two places at once. How can we know for sure? Read more. Types of shadow people. For the sake of this article about types of shadow people, I think it best to share common descriptions of shadowed entities. We'll assume that most of them are indeed ghosts. Maybe just their appearances differ. Human-shaped shadow people. This type of shadow person is self-explanatory and the most common seen by witnesses. The only differences in description might be due to how well the ghost has become visible, coupled with the mental condition of the disembodied person. Shadow ghosts have been described as sometimes missing facial features, details of clothing, hair, or outer extremities, such as hands, feet, etc. The shadowed mass can be transparent, but has also been described as dark, quote-unquote, black static. Shadow people are often thought to be male in appearance, although children and women have been described in accounts. Shadow people move quickly, are able to disappear into walls, through doors, etc. Many people claim to be able to see shadow people easier through peripheral vision, especially when the shadow is moving, often causing witnesses to feel like they are being watched. Many times, shadow people are just afraid as those who see them. It is common for them to run and hide. There are some ill-willed specters who attack while in shadow form, sometimes while people are in bed. See incubus, succubus. And that'll keep one from sleeping at night. I don't know. Many times shadow people are just as afraid as those who see them. I don't know if that's true, though, is it? I mean, maybe, but we haven't really come across that yet in, today or last night. And we've gone over quite a bit of stuff. And I don't know, I've studied this subject off and on for years, and I haven't really come across that. Though I heard at least one person describe something like he encountered, or he had a shadow person in his house, and it seemed like it was just sort of cowering in the corner of his room for like several days or something, almost like it was scared of something, Isn't that weird? Black mists, dark ectoplasm, moving shadows. This is one of the most common of shadow people sightings. Many times, the shadow person may not keep their shape when moving fast or be seen as a dark mist before becoming fully visible. They are intelligent and tend to frighten people who cannot readily identify them as a human form. Animal-shaped shadow ghosts. Sometimes animals are seen as apparitions or in shadowed form. It is more common to see smaller animals as lower to the ground, moving shadows. Eyewitness accounts of shadow animals are less common than sightings of shadow people. I need to take a sip of tea. Other types of shadow people. It is not uncommon for people to see a shadow ghost peeking from around a corner. Shadow people typically prefer the cover of darkness. This is likely because they can remain more covert, blending in with the shadows. The ghosts of children are smaller and often tend to be more playful. Both adult and child will sometimes peer around corners or from behind objects to see if the coast is clear to move about. Shadow ghosts have also been seen wearing hats. It is not uncommon for people who are disembodied to still mentally project their image wearing clothing. Apparitions of people attest to this fact, as sightings of see-through ghosts are often described wearing clothes or a period dress from their era. Many believe the Hat Man type of ghost to be something otherworldly, but their traits seem to be human. Huh. That's so weird how the author of this website article apparently is seems so thoroughly convinced that many of these entities are human in nature, and I don't think that they are. But who knows? Other strange anomalies associated with shadow ghosts tend to be disturbing to people. Red eyes or horns, for example, make this type of shadow ghost seem demonic in appearance. Our investigations and experiments with such entities revealed them to be ghosts very capable of altering appearances in order to deceive and frighten victims. Just like there are people who frighten us here in the physical world, there are ghosts of people who choose to exhibit the same behavior after their body has expired. Well, I guess that's their theory, that many of these are basically human in origin, or a type of ghost, human ghost. All right, so let's see. This article that you have, let me pull it up here. Wait. It's giving me oh, there we go. All right, yeah, here, let me just pull this up on my tablet and we shall read and analyze it. One moment. Okay. So this is a wikipedia.org article on shade in mythology. In literature and poetry, a shade, translating Greek, don't know how to say that, then Latin umbra, is the spirit or ghost of a dead person residing in the underworld. An underworld where the dead live in shadow is common to beliefs in the ancient Near East, in biblical Hebrew expressed by the term Salmaveth, I think might be how you say that. Literally, death shadow, shadow of death, alternate term for Sheol. The Witch of Endor in the first book of Samuel notably conjures the ghost of Samuel. Only select individuals are exempt from the fate of dwelling in shadow after death and instead ascend to the divine sphere. This is the apotheosis aspired to by kings claiming divinity and reflected in the veneration of heroes. Plutarch relates how Alexander the Great was inconsolable after the death of Hephaestion, not sure how to say that, up to the moment he received an oracle of Ammon confirming that the deceased was a hero, i.e., enjoyed the status of a divinity. Shades appear in Book 11 of Homer's Odyssey. when Odysseus descends into Hades, and in Virgil's Aeneid, when Aeneas travels to the underworld. In the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, many of the dead are similarly referred to as shades, Italian umbra, including Dante's guide, Virgil. The phrase, "Peace to thy gentle shade, and endless rest," is sometimes seen in epitaphs and was used by Alexander Pope in his epitaph for Nicholas Rowe. Interesting stuff. And so of course, the obvious question is, could these shadow people be a form of shade? Could a shade appear to us as a shadow person? The spirit or ghost of a dead person residing in the underworld. Fascinating. Thank you for sending that link. Yeah, I mentioned this last night. Indeed, if any of you out there watching, ever have any interesting article relating to the stream topic, whatever stream it happens to be that you want me to read and analyze on stream, feel free to leave it in the chat and we'll take a look at it. The only criteria is it must, of course, be related to the subject of the stream, of what we're talking about right then and there. As long as it is, I'll be happy to look at it. So let's see, what else do we have here? What have we not looked at? Let's see. Yeah, hang on, I think we went to thoughtco.com last night. Let me just see real quick. Yes, we did. Okay. Please bear with me. thepsychicdetective.com. I don't think we've been there yet. the-psychic-detective.com. Yes, can I see a simplified view, please? Excellent. All right. The Psychic Detective, Shadow People. Who or what are the shadow people? By Jeffrey R. Palmer. Shadow people, also known as shadow folk or shadow beings, are usually attracted to one person or location for unknown reasons. Often they are seen as dark silhouettes of human shape, generally male, that prefer to watch someone unseen and flee the moment they are noticed. Still, this doesn't always fit the experience. While some people distinctly see a shadow human form, others have described shapeless, wispy black blobs and swirling columns of dark smoke. The personalities or characteristics of shadow people range greatly from shy and skittish to downright nasty and malevolent, with a few witnesses describing them as the ultimate essence of pure evil. Accounts of shadow people have been reported all over the world. There has been an increase of reported sightings of these creatures within the last 5 to 10 years, though there is anecdotal evidence of these creatures appearing before human witnesses throughout our history. Reports of shadow people are in many respects different from accounts of ghosts. Ghosts are said to be the disembodied spirits of deceased people and are usually said to take on the appearance and characteristics of human beings. Orbs of light, ectoplasm, and glowing mists have also been associated with ghost sightings. None of which is common occurrence of shadow people. Although many accounts describe shadow beings as having human-like form, they are generally not described as resembling actual individuals, living or deceased. It is unheard of in my experience that shadow people ever communicate verbally with witnesses. Feelings of dread, intense fear, or panic and paralysis have been ascribed to the experience of witnessing a shadow person. The more consistent accounts of shadow people typically describe a feeling of dread associated with the presence of this phenomena, and animals are said to react to the phenomena with fear and hostility. Shadow beings are said to move extremely fast and travel through solid matter. They typically are said to have no discernible features such as mouths, noses, or eyes. Their forms are usually described as somewhat thin or smoke-like. Direct visual contact is rarely reported by most eyewitnesses of shadow people. They are said to usually disappear before they can be seen clearly, and are seen, quote, in the corner of one's eye, end quote. These beings are said to often appear in mirrors. There are many proposed explanations of this phenomena. Some of these explanations are outlined below. One of the more creative theories is that shadow beings are manifest thought forms, meaning that they are collections of negative psychic energy from areas where traumatic events have taken place and evil people frequent. The negative psychic energy begins to manifest and takes on form and motive, thriving on fear and negative emotions for sustenance. Shadow beings have also been described as forms of ghosts, demons, interdimensional beings. The most popular explanation seems to be that they are some sort of other dimensional beings whose dimension of origin occasionally overlaps with ours, which is said to explain their ethereal appearance and fleeting nature. As with most supernatural phenomena, there is usually a proposed logical, scientifically valid explanation for credible experiences that neither vilify eyewitnesses nor require violation of generally accepted scientific principles. Several probable rational explanations for illusions resulting in the believed perception of shadow beings are outlined below. There is a condition known as hypnagogia, waking sleep, which amounts to a state of semi-consciousness in which a person can be thinking clearly and yet perceiving images that are being dreamed. This state is probably responsible for most so-called supernatural experiences by honest, rational people. It has also been proven recently that areas with erratic or powerful electromagnetic fields can interfere with the electrical impulses or firing synapses of the human mind, thus influencing people subjected to such environments over time to believe that they are hearing or seeing ghosts, aliens, or perhaps shadow beings. Such environments include old buildings with substandard wiring, power plants, and areas with naturally occurring strong magnetic fields. Yes, which, as I mentioned briefly last night, so I'll just mention it briefly here again. Should we call into question more the mind of the perceiver and what can theoretically hijack the mind of the perceiver of paranormal phenomena? Because we're constantly trying to analyze the phenomena itself, but we have to remember that all of this paranormal phenomena, for us humans at least, when we're experiencing it, we are experiencing it through the medium of the mind. Now, the mind can be hijacked, but to take that a step further, I'm not trying to dismiss the existence of paranormal phenomena. In fact, it's theoretically possible that the mind can be hijacked by paranormal phenomena itself and then made to see other things that aren't really there. So I feel like there was another point I was maybe going to make. I'm not quite sure what it was. See, it's rather ridiculous to refer to materialism as some sort of science, as is often done when it's really just an interpretation of data. Yeah, that makes sense. Some sort of science when it's really just an interpretation of data. Yeah, because we don't know what we don't know. All right, so let's see. Perhaps the only aspect of alleged eyewitness accounts of shadow people that remains difficult to explain in objective scientific terms is the similarity of the beings being seen in these alleged accounts, especially the tall man with a hat that is reported as often by 4-year-old children as with adults. However, this could simply be a result of common archetypes, no similarities between many shadow people reports and the Grim Reaper, shared in the subconscious of all people, just as people all over the world report dreams of flying and falling. And that's it for this site. Yeah, I mean, could it be all purely psychological? It could be, but I don't know. I don't know. I think the jury's still out on that. Next, we have tokenrock.com, Shadow People, a thorough explanation. Let's see what they have to say. Shadow people. Description. Accounts of shadow people or shadow beings have been reported by millions of individuals all over the world, with evidence of these beings appearing before human witnesses throughout history. An increase of reported sightings over the last decade have brought these mysterious occurrences to mainstream consciousness. So, what are shadow people? Both children and adults observe these beings as fast, dark movements in their peripheral vision. Some have seen them from a distance, while others have had face-to-face encounters. Most often, they are seen as dark, human-shaped silhouettes, usually male, but generally lacking any other characteristics of gender. Shadow beings are said to move extremely fast and travel through solid matter. They typically have no discernible features such as mouths, noses, or eyes, and their forms are usually described as somewhat thin or smoke-like. While some people distinctly see a shadowy human form, others have described shapeless, wispy black blobs and swirling columns of dark smoke. I think this is exactly what we just read on another site, but oh well. Some are seen only from the waist up. Others clearly have legs that are seen fleeing from their observers. In many cases, witnesses describe the sense of being watched and discovering the shadow person observing them. Once noticed, the shadow person seems to flee quite rapidly, sometimes traveling through walls or closed doors and bushes. Sometimes they simply fade into the dark recesses of the night. It is believed that these shadow people are some sort of other dimensional beings whose dimension of origin occasionally overlaps with ours, which is said to explain their ethereal appearance and fleeting nature. This does sound similar. I'm not sure if this is exactly what we've already read on another site or just similar. If I identify material as exactly what we've read, at that point I will move on to something else, obviously. But I'm not sure, so I'm going to continue for now. It is believed that these shadow people are some sort of other dimensional beings whose dimension of origin, I just said that. Reports of shadow people are in many respects different from accounts of ghosts. Ghosts are said to be disembodied spirits. Okay, I'm pretty sure we did read this on another site. They're literally just, well, someone's copying someone, I guess, is what has happened. All right. Ghosthuntingequipment.com. See what they have to say about shadow people. Shadow people are paranormal shadow-like creatures that people usually see in their peripheral vision. Reports suggest that they do not appear to reflect light, and their appearance is essentially a silhouette in black. Wait a second, is this? I think this one's actually different. They usually have no discernible features beyond the general outline of their form. However, shadow people have been reported to have shifted into a more human form, and in these instances, it is said that sometimes features such as glowing eyes and sometimes mouths and nostrils are discernible. Reports of shadow people, sometimes called shadow folk, shadow men, or shadow beings, have many similarities with ghost sightings, so many similarities that many paranormal experts consider ghost and shadow people one and the same. I think that saying is actually supposed to be one in the same. However, other experts disagree and claim that shadow people are a separate phenomenon from ghosts for a variety of reasons. First, they claim that the movement of shadow people is said to be quick and jerky, sometimes with stops, starts, and changes of direction, not at all like the smooth, floating motion often associated with ghost sighting. This is apparently the primary reason they are usually seen out of the corner of the eye. Second, some people report being able to discern that the shadow people are wearing a fedora-style hat like a 1930s-era gangster or a cloak. Third, shadow people usually appear quite solid, unlike the ephemeral appearance of ghosts. Fourth, there are very few reports of positive interactions with shadow people. Unlike the friendly ghost sightings that are fairly common, encounters with shadow folk are almost always frightening or shocking. In fact, even the experts that view shadow men as a subset of ghosts usually concede that shadow men are a malignant being, or are malignant beings, I think it's supposed to say. The supporters of shadow people as a separate and unique phenomenon offer all sorts of speculation about the nature of shadow people using ideas from religion, parapsychology, metaphysics, and the occult. One of the many ideas is that shadow people represent a thought form, ghost, or demon that was created by extraordinary pain, suffering, and trauma in a dying person's life. Others suggest that shadow folk have been purposefully summoned from another realm through black magic or other occult practices. The fact that they do not seem to reflect light has led some to theorize that they are from an alternate universe with different laws of physics, or perhaps they are caught in a trap between two physical universes. David Icke has proposed that shadow people are related to gray aliens or to the reptilian humanoids. The theories about the nature of shadow people are almost endless, but they are certainly quarry that should not be sought out by experienced, or that should only be sought out by experienced, well-equipped ghost hunting teams, never by solo hunters. Interesting. All right, let's see what else we have here. Google, or no, I guess this isn't Google. This is, I think this is Bing. I'm looking for a label somewhere, but regardless, it's displaying that little question thing where it says people also ask. So let's just go through that real quick and just see what we find, if it's anything interesting or useful. Is the Shadow Man real? And it pulls something from wikipedia.org. Background in the Black Master and the Shadow, the villains. That's just about a movie or something. Do you see shadow spirits? You may have seen shadow spirits. There are two possible explanations for seeing shadow spirits. The first, and possibly the most common, is that you're in a state of hypnagogia. Hypnagogia is the halfway stage between wakefulness and sleep. What does it mean when you see a black shadow? The sight of a black shadow usually signifies the presence of a spirit or entity, usually evil due to the heaviness in color or presence. If the shadow makes you feel agitated or uneasy, it is most definitely not a good spirit, in which case you should say a prayer and have the location blessed. From philosophyreligion.blurted.com. What are the shadow people? The shadow people. The shadow people is a unique subbranch of violent spirits that introduced in Supernatural Joyride. What? Okay, this is Bing. Okay, I just saw it. Let's go on to page 2 now and see what else we can find. These look like the sites we've already been to. Oh, here we go. MysteriousUniverse.org, one of my favorite sites on this channel, as longtime viewers will know. The lurking shadow people. All right, let us burn and observe. Sometimes I wish I could just stream all day, every day, but it just takes up so much damn energy. Otherwise, I quite possibly would stream a lot more often, because it's a lot of fun. All right, I don't know if the site's going to cooperate or not. Hang on. Okay, here we go. The Lurking Shadow People by Jason Offutt, March 27th, 2012. Quote, "This scares me and I don't know what it is. I have been seeing them since I was a little girl. Always out of the corner of my eye, a tall black shadow. I always feel like something or someone is by me. Last night I went down to my bedroom. There it was, standing next to my dresser. I ran upstairs crying to my mom. She went down and looked, saying it was only because I was overtired. But I know what I saw. It was so scary. I don't know what it is. I need all the help I can get." End quote. Jessica's Cry for Help, 10th of January, 2010. Tales of walking shadows come from across the world. Some of these shadow people wander through the periphery of our lives. Others stay for years. People can rarely make out features of these darker-than-night, human-shaped entities other than an occasional set of blazing red eyes. Shadow people often appear dressed as a medieval monk, wearing a fedora, or bald and sexless. These entities may simply trek through our bedroom at night, never to be seen again, while others may lurk in doorways, just watching, day after day. Still others attack with energy-draining fear. What are they? I've studied the shadow people phenomena for the past decade and have come to the conclusion the term shadow people is a catch-all for entities that exhibit certain characteristics, but their origins can be wildly different. Through research and personal experience, I've categorized these creatures by behavior. Benign shadows. Shadow people that seem to travel briefly through a person's life. I saw these entities as a child. They appeared to walk with purpose through my room, never acknowledging me, and never straying from their path. I never felt an unholy fear, just the fear of watching a dark human-shaped trespasser walk past my bed. Negative shadows. Although these shadow people tend to simply lurk, they are associated with the feeling of unnatural terror. Red-eyed shadows. These entities are always negative, but stare at experiencers with blazing red eyes. Victims often say they feel this creature feed from their fear. Hooded shadows. Dressed as an ancient monk, people who encounter these shadow people feel a deep rage bubbling behind the black cowl. Okay, so there, as was mentioned earlier in the chat, yes, apparently that is another specific form of shadow people known as hooded shadows or perhaps hooded beings. The Hat Man. This entity is the most curious. Dressed in a fedora and sometimes appearing to wear an old-time business suit, the Hat Man appears to people in cultures across the planet. Shadow people may be demonic entities, ghosts, interdimensional travelers, or other denizens of the dark realm we call the unknown. Regardless of their label, shadow people could very well be more than just one type of being. Brad Steger, author of Shadow World, has studied the paranormal for more than 50 years and agrees there are many possible explanations for shadow people. Quote, I would say that experiencers are seeing all of the above and giving them/it the name of shadow people. End quote. Whatever these entities are, they're shocking to those who see them. A gray sheet of cloud stretched across the sky as 12-year-old Doug ran to the corner store. Quote, it was overcast but not raining, and in the middle of the afternoon, Doug said. That day was shadowless, and decades later he still doesn't know what he saw on his way home from the store, arms laden with food. At first he thought it was a friend. Quote, as I approached the corner to turn onto my street, I saw something black sticking beyond the bushes in the front of my house, Doug said. I yelled, Andre, and started running toward my driveway where the bushes are, end quote. The dark figure wasn't his friend Andre. A black, man-shaped shadow grew from behind the bushes in this quiet afternoon and began running toward Doug's house. Quote, after a few steps, I saw the shadow running down my driveway toward the backyard, he said. I ran up the driveway to the gate that leads to my backyard. I couldn't believe my eyes. Doug stood at the gate as the black shadow in the shape of a man ran across his yard and disappeared through a fence. I was shocked, he said. I couldn't stop thinking about it. This thing, what could it be? Why was it black when most stereotypical stories said that ghosts were white? Could this be demonic? Could it be like me, just a person? What did Doug see? A ghost? A demon? A dimensional traveler? Or was it all in his mind? Science. Quote, I've been visited by what I presume to be the same shadow 3 times in my life, and the memories have haunted me ever since. When I was 6, I saw it at my dad's new house, towering over my bed. I couldn't move, and I don't remember what happened next. All I remember is trying to scream, but there was this horrible weight on my chest. End quote. From Luke Purdy. Most of the shadow people encounters I've collected over the years are readily explainable. The experiencer wakes to find a black human figure standing in the doorway of their bedroom or leaning over their bed, just watching. A tightness grips their chest like the weight of a person is upon them. They can't breathe. Suddenly, the choking eases and the shadow being is gone. This type of encounter is common, and psychology has a name for it: sleep paralysis. April Habarian, a psychology professor at Northwest Missouri State University, said most shadow people encounters are probably the product of dreams. When people sleep and enter the REM phase, quote, it's very common for them to see things, Habereen said. The fear, the paralysis, and the entities are normal. Quote, there are hormones in REM sleep that paralyze the major muscle groups, and it's called paradoxical sleep, she said. Quote, although this happens during REM, these people don't stay asleep and the hormones are still in their bodies. It can last up to 8 minutes and they feel pressure on their chest and can see people, end quote. When the experiencer becomes fully awake, the shadow person encounter is over. All that's left is the fear. Other shadow people encounters, as well as those of ghosts/UFOs/Bigfoot for that matter, can be attributed to the same trick of light and shadow that allows us to see faces in clouds and carpets. These sightings can also be from electrical stimulation to certain parts of the brain or drugs. Chemist Rick Toomey said anything that throws off the chemical balance of the brain causes all sorts of problems. Quote, all sensation is in the nervous system and it's all chemistry, he said. If every neurotransmitter is chemistry, you can wreak havoc with that. However, many encounter shadow people in full consciousness and full daylight, removing the logical, scientific answers and leaving something terrible. The religious world. Quote, my best friend, when he was a boy, he was laying on his bed with the lights on. A shadowy figure emerged from his closet and moved towards his bedside. The shadow being reached out a finger and touched my buddy's leg. He screamed and the figure vanished, and his folks were there in moments. My friend's father noticed that the closet door was open, and his parents knew he never slept without it closed. The black spot on his leg remained visible for several years, but the shadow being never returned. To this day, my friend has no idea what happened, but he does know one thing. It was real. End quote. From Paul Sekros. Although most reported shadow people encounters involve an entity simply appearing and disappearing, many aren't that innocent. Negative shadows, red-eyed shadows, and hooded shadows all bring a feeling of horror when they step into someone's life. These creatures are known by different names: demons, jinn, dark shadows, skilly, but their nature is the same. Bishop James Long, pastor of St. Christopher Old Catholic Church in Louisville, Kentucky, has studied demonology for years and knows shadow people well. To him, they are something evil. Quote, shadow people must be taken seriously and they can be quite dangerous, he said. When a human spirit tries to manifest itself, its form is black, or otherwise known as shadow. It is energy trying to manifest itself so that it can appear to have the physical characteristics it had when living on Earth. End quote. These entities can move, communicate, and attack, drawing energy from their human victim. Certainly shadows, this is in quotes, certainly shadows that attack are demonic in nature and should be avoided at all times, Long said. I would strongly encourage anyone who witnesses a dark shadow to be careful. End quote. Cody Lilly's family has encountered this type of shadow for years, a black, human-shaped figure, featureless except for a wide-brimmed hat. Quote, we called him the cowboy because he kind of looked like the Marlboro Man, Lilly said. The cowboy stepped into Lilly's life his sophomore year of high school in Clarinda, Iowa, and visited almost nightly for 2 years, pacing about his room, waiting for something. The entity, with fiery red eyes, never spoke and never approached him, but Lilly knew why it was there. It hungered. Quote, it was feeding, Lilly said, convinced the cowboy was absorbing energy from his terror. The first time I saw it, I was completely incapacitated by how scared I was of it. End quote. Lilly soon went to college 30 miles south, and the visit stopped until after graduation in 2011 when he moved to Nebraska. Quote, my girlfriend that is now my fiance is in Kansas City and I'm in Omaha. I was crashing with friends here, he said. My car started acting up. I'm in the process of looking for a job, finding an apartment, buying an engagement ring. I had a lot of stuff on my plate, which might have brought on what happened, end quote. What happened was the cowboy. I'm sitting in my car on the phone with my mom. I don't know much about cars, but my mom does, end quote. As Lilly described the car's behavior to his mother, he noticed a movement in the corner of his right eye. Lilly turned toward the passenger side window and saw it, the shadow man that once tormented him in the night, the cowboy. Quote, it was full on, a shadow person in an old fedora, Lilly said. It was standing there and leaned over like it's bending to look at me. As Lily stared in horror at this red-eyed shadow man in full daylight, the cowboy reached out its arm and knocked on the car window. It knocked 2 times, Lily said. After it knocked, it dissolved in my vision. It just showed up, knocked on my window, and was gone. End quote. Lily wonders if the cowboy wanted to let him know it was still around. Quote, it's been quite some time that I saw him, he said. I'm just kind of thinking he just showed up. I was feeling stressed out, and I think he showed up just to feed on that. In Islam, the supernatural jinn can be a companion or a dark, shadowy predator. Quote, jinns are invisible entities believed in by most all Muslims and Middle Eastern folklore, said religion expert Dashti Namaste. Quote, jinns get in and out of human spheres regularly, and it is believed that any human is able to make contact with a jinn, end quote. Although jinn can be benevolent, some jinn are wicked, appearing as dark figures that lurk in ruins and cemeteries, waiting for an unsuspecting human soul to stumble by. The wicked jinn, much like the demons of Christianity, are deceivers and may present themselves as the ghost of a loved one to insert themselves into a human's life. Washti, a Cherokee, said the nature of shadow beings in the American Indian tradition are just as dark. Quote, they're humanoid-shaped but not proportionate to a normal person, Wadi said. Their appearance is more monstrous in nature, end quote. These shadow beings are the product of medicine men that have strayed from the path of healing. Quote, there seem to be a classification of spiritual beings that are shadow for the most part. These things can be manipulated by bad medicine or bad magic, Wadi said. They either take that form to attack other people, or they use some other spiritual being as a spiritual attack, end quote. In the Cherokee language, these dark medicine people are skilly, or witch. Quote, they're still alive to some degree, but they're not necessarily considered human, end quote. Well, this article has some good stuff. My green tea is complete. Ghosts. Quote, I have a young boy, shadow/spirit, in my home. He appears as a solid black cutout-like figure. He is a prankster too, but he's not mean or evil. He lets us know he's here at times by playing with the animals. Kittens, dogs, puppies, etc. Play, not mean. The dogs and puppies are wagging their tails. He moves my Barbies if he really wants my attention. And the other day he didn't want the door to his room closed, so he opened it. He's a good kid. End quote. From Kim Tamser. A family sees a black figure come down the stairs at the same time at night, turn into the kitchen and disappear. A dark man in an out-of-date suit walks through a child's bedroom and down the hallway. Some shadow people encounters, benign ones like these, could very well be disembodied spirits wandering the earth. D.H. Parsons, president of the Bliss Parsons Institute of Metaphysics in Columbia, Missouri, has encountered many shadow people while investigating a haunting. Although many fellow investigators consider shadow people demonic, Parsons doesn't necessarily agree. Quote, my feeling is that a shadow person is another representation of a residual memory of a person who had such a strong personality in life that a bit of their energy remained here in this dimension after their spirit crossed over, Parsons said. Most of the time, the spirit beings are either friendly to us or confused by us or curious as to why we are there, but they have never done us any harm. not even the shadows, end quote. Hello, Ryan. Good to see you here. Yes, I'm live streaming on a Thursday for a change. I know it's unusual, but here I am. Not so for 18-year-old Dave Stanfield. Stanfield didn't expect something to be waiting for him in his room when he woke. Something dark. A strange feeling pulled Stanfield from a deep sleep. As he lay in the gray room, staring at his bedroom wall, he saw it. Quote, I woke for no reason, had no weird dreams, and I wasn't groggy or half asleep, he said. My room was dark other than some stray beams coming through the blinds, and I could see a man, darker than the night like a void, end quote. Thanks, not feeling the best today. I'm trying to rest and recover. Happy catching their stream. Oh no. Well, I hope you feel better. I hope you get your rest and recovery. Take it easy. Allow yourself to recover. That's always important. The figure stood at the end of the bed. Quote, I could only make out the silhouette of his head and shoulders. The rest of him just went straight into the floor, Stanfield said. There were no legs or feet, no red eyes, no facial features whatsoever, end quote. Terrified, Stanfield slid low in bed, pulling the covers slowly over his face, watching the black, man-shaped figure standing over him until his blankets hid the horror from his view, and Stanfield fell back to sleep. Stanfield is now 29, and although he doesn't know what this shadow being was, he knows he saw it, and it haunts him still. Quote, only in the past couple of years have I been able to find anything on the subject matter, Stanfield said. It's almost like re-victimization when reading stories from other people that describe experiences like mine. I never knew it could be so widespread, and I'm still dealing with the shock, end quote. But, as with Parsons' encounters, this being didn't harm Stanfield, at least not physically. Fascinating stuff. Possible food poisoning. Oh no, jeez. Oh boy. Yes, indeed, Joseph. Can't have the highs without the lows, though, even regarding our health. Yes, that's very true. And that is hashtag relatable for me, indeed. In fact, the only reason I'm able to do this stream right now is because I'm doing it first thing in the day when I still have energy before my energy levels plummet as they typically do on non-caffeine days. But hey, I'm like sort of beating the system this way, I guess. Anyway. Interdimensional travelers. Quote, harmless, just a watcher is all, end quote, from Don Hall. Most shadow people encounters are benign, a dark figure lingering in the corners of your life, watching. Could these entities simply be watching us from a realm barely removed from our own? Marie Jones, author of books exploring science and the paranormal, thinks other dimensions could be homes of shadow people. Quote, in my research into quantum and theoretical physics, I came across concepts that really opened up the possibilities to me that entities from somewhere else could be coming here, Jones said. By the way, thanks for all the likes on the stream to those of you who are watching. I'm noticing the paranormal streams are getting more likes, so I guess people like those more, which good news. I like them a lot too, and definitely plan to continue doing them. So yeah, thanks for that. Oh, I just got another one. Thank you, whoever liked just now. I really appreciate it. One of these concepts is wrapped around different dimensions. Quote, theoretically, if these infinite other universes exist, we really should not physically be able to access them, Jones said. Yet even theoretical physicists entertain the thought that perhaps the laws of physics on the other side allow for some crossover, end quote. Clark Kent's grandfather died in 1977, and his grandmother moved to a small apartment, leaving her old house empty. Shortly after, 10-year-old Kent's family moved in. Quote, my first friend in the new neighborhood was my next-door neighbor, Jim, Kent said. We are good friends to this day, end quote. On a day in 1979, Kent invited Jim to his house to play ping pong, and it's haunted him since. There's a little asterisk by Clark Kent, probably because the person didn't want their name to be known or something. Let's see if it says. It doesn't say. Oh well. That day after school, Kent and Jim had about 2 hours before Kent's parents came home from work, which meant ping pong in the basement between peeks at the forbidden stash of Playboys in a dusty alcove. It was there Kent saw something he didn't expect. Quote, "During our game, I was facing the alcove," Kent said. "At a certain point, something caught my attention." End quote. Standing in the alcove was the shadow of a man wearing a fedora. "It was creepy, and I had to pause," Kent said. "I could not figure out how any combination of the boxes could cast such a shadow. Then it moved." Kent stood at the ping pong table, staring at the dark figure watching him from the alcove. He then quickly looked at Jim, who was looking at him. Quote, "He realized I had seen something," Kent said. "I was struck by the realization that no man was casting a shadow on the wall. The shadow was solid and was not attached to any object. I turned and scrambled up the stairs with Jim right behind me." End quote. At the top of the stairs, their breath coming fast and heavy, Kent slammed and latched the basement door, then, quote, looked at Jim with wide eyes, end quote. Jim denied seeing the Shadow Man that day and for nearly 30 years after. As the two met for a long-needed reunion, Kent mentioned the Shadow Man in his basement. Jim sunk into his chair and spoke in a whisper. "I'll never forget that hat." "I was stunned," Kent said. Then he asked the same question he'd asked 3 decades ago. "Did you see it?" "Yes, I did," Jim told him. "I was scared." But did this entity, this watcher, step into Kent's life from a parallel universe? Although some physicists entertain the idea of these multiple universes, physicist David Richardson isn't eager to join them. Quote, "I hate to bring this up in this context, but if there were extra dimensions, shadow people might actually be people," he said. "I'm skeptical of that, but it's possible. We're just starting to figure out that sort of stuff." End quote. Ghost, demon, jinn, skilly, traveler, regardless of the nature of these entities, regardless of their intentions, the advice for each encounter is the same. Proceed with caution. Quote, "Yes, this person's name is actually Clark Kent." Oh, here we go. "Although bearing the name of Superman's alter ego may be a burden to some, Kent said his name has netted him many free bottles of beer from strangers at taverns. Who doesn't want to buy a drink for the last son of Krypton?" All right, and that's it for that article. So this is some very fascinating stuff indeed that we have been going for a while now. Hang on. All right, well, you guys, I hate to say it, but I think that's about all I can handle for right now. I'm starting to get hungry and I'm starting to sort of lose my voice, and I've consumed my green tea. So I guess that's going to be it for this study of shadow people. If by some miracle I have the energy later today, I'll try coming back. Maybe we'll look at this subject more, but I'm sure that regardless, we will return to this subject of shadow people on this channel eventually, sooner or later. I'm not sure when yet, but I also want to look at other paranormal subjects in the near future, in addition to continuing to do my other kinds of streams. So we'll be doing those, but yes, we will return to shadow people soon enough. Let's see, plot twist, shadow people are what you become after disappearing into the Back to the Future universe. Yeah, I mean, that would be one hell of a plot twist. All right, so thank you guys for being here. I definitely appreciate it. I'm glad that there are people interested in this stuff, as am I, and like to listen to me read about it and sort of ramble on about it. If I'm not back today, I'll almost certainly be back on Saturday, and then again on Monday, and then again on Wednesday. Please take care, Mr. Poetic. Thank you. You take care too, Ryan, and everyone else out there. Just thanks again so much. This has been a lot of fun, and hope to see you next time. Bye for now.